Welcome to What the Flick's discussion of Mad Men, episode 13 of season 6, the season finale. Very stressful time for me, a lot of pausing the DVR just to see how much time was left in the show. Very anxious. Ben, Gina, Alonso, and Cenk in care of, the name of the episode. Alonso, summarize it.
Well, I think we all know what this one was about. I think kind of classic season finale in that it wraps up a lot of the stories that have been sort of building over the course of the season, and at the same time leaving us wondering, oh God, what the hell is going to happen next year? You get a lot of big things like Don Draper gets fired. That clearly is the big takeaway. But you also have, Ted and Pete are going to California, and Peggy is looking very comfortable in Don's old chair, and Megan is also going to California, and Don may finally be opening up to his kids, and Sally Draper maybe having to reevaluate her father once again. A lot of stuff happened. They crammed into an hour and 8 minutes, and I think it could have been another half hour to, give us more stuff. But it was great.
I read a bunch of blogs. I read the Rolling Stone discussion of it. It's very good. Huffington Post too. But I wasn't clear whether Don was fired because I took them literally at here. We're giving you a couple months at least. It's the holidays. We'll discuss it then. He says I want a return date. They don't give it to him, but. Then I was reading this morning that no, that's what he said. I don't know who frickin' remembers this. It's what he said to Freddie Rumsen in episode 2. He'd take a couple of months, no return date, and of course Freddie was fired. So your take was that he was fired.
You've got Duck coming off the elevator with that other guy, yes. And so that's clearly like you're being
his replacement, right? Yeah.
And let's remember the whole big thing about Don and his not wanting to ever sign a contract. Which for him gave him the freedom of getting to leave whenever he wants, but it also gives Sterling Cooper Partners now the freedom to ditch his ass.
And on the subject of not being able to recall stuff, do you know whether he was ever...
I seem to recall it finally being torn in half, like they kept trying to get him to sign one. I'm thinking that he didn't. I'm sure more hardcore fans can tell me exactly how that finally went down, but I recall him not signing a contract.
And that's such a sign of his own comeuppance that he finally got this season. Because I can only assume he never signed a contract because he wanted to make sure he could leave whenever he wanted. It never crossed his mind that he would get sacked, he would get kicked out.
Yeah. But what did they have without him? I think I get why they felt they had to do it. The Hershey's meeting was insane. He keeps not showing up to things, which is insane. But without Don, and especially if Ted goes to California, what are they left with?
No, they
Harry Hamlin?
First of all, as they said, what they told him was, of course, a lie. They told him Ted thinks he can handle it from California with Peggy here, but here we are bringing somebody in to replace you. Right. So they're not really doing that.
At the same time, we saw Peggy in his office at the end, which is symbolic of maybe she's taking over in season 7.
Something I read in one of the blogs, I think it was Hollywood Reporter, said that they took that iconic image of Don in his office chair from season 1 and sort of recreated that with Peggy.
Absolutely. And with that, it was kind of telling where Ted's big speech to Peggy was, I can't be around you. And if she ends up being sort of the hub, the New York liaison, then Ted has a whole new problem, and it never really got solved by him leaving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at least on the other coast, you can't sleep with her. You just have to talk to her on the phone all the time.
Can I admit something I shouldn't admit? That I'm glad Ted slept with Peggy. Like, I felt like, you know what, I know it was the wrong move and it's not right for your wife, and then you, in essence, wind up lying to Peggy and you're moving your whole family out to California. First of all, LA's much nicer than New York. So that's a good...
1968 LA? Think about it.
Still.
Smoggy and...
No, I hear you, but still. Go live by the ocean. And look, they're going to look back and they're going to be like, we're glad we did it. Am I crazy for thinking that?
No, I don't think you're crazy for thinking that at all. I think that it was that was satisfying to a number. I don't give a shit about Ted and Peggy at all. Never have. Like, I was glad that I don't know, I didn't care. I thought it was a really nice scene because when she's lying on his chest, they look so happy, and then Ted turned it in a second.
Right. And seeing so many TV shows and just living life or whatever, and Ted, who's kind of, not in a bad way, but he's kind of spineless, and he kind of just goes with the wind. And he goes, girl, like, I promise that this is going to be forever. I'm like,
right.
Girl, don't date him.com. Don't fall for it.
When he crawled into bed with his wife, I thought she was going to go, Is that Chanel number 5?
Right, everybody's like, you gotta take a shower, you gotta wash your face at the bare minimum. For the love of God, Ted, Jesus Christ.
So, all right, so let's talk about Don, because that's really, I think that, there was a whole lot going on with him this season. I think.
Oh, can I say one? I'm sorry, one thing about Peggy, because I love there was that great sort of the difference between a great man-women moment, relevant in 1968 and relevant now, because Peggy's like, and what was with that look she shot me? Did you tell her something? And Ted is like, what fucking look?
I don't know why women do anything.
I don't know why women do anything. Right, exactly. And I was like, she didn't give a look. Did she give a look? And then
I know she gave a look.
Right.
I didn't see a look.
I didn't see a look.
I gave a look.
There was a little bit. I couldn't. It was hard to tell.
Anyway,
what was going
so
on.
Don.
My favorite thing,
No.
was when Peggy came in with the breast pushed
Have
down.
you
so
seen Peggy's cleavage before in the
I don't
office?
I
think
think,
so.
yeah, that maybe one other time, but it's been forever,
Yeah.
Vixen by night.
Vixen by night.
She
Carries
might
one
as well.
line the whole show.
Yeah, she might as well have written there, what now?
So Don Draper. So this season he has been self-destructing. Slowly, by inches, by degrees, and this episode he gets thrown in the drunk tank. He totally has a meltdown of honesty in the Hershey pitch. He screws over
Pours out
Megan's
all his-
big plans,
pours out all his liquor.
and then realizes cold turkey might not be the greatest idea, and then we think loses his job, or at least gets super suspended.
But then, perhaps most significantly, and part of the back half of the Hershey's pitch is that there's honesty there to his colleagues, and then what we never thought would happen is honesty to his children.
Yes.
There on Thanksgiving, and getting a look from Sally, who's a very mature kid, that she knows this is a significant moment, and that look she has to her dad is a look that you look for from your daughter.
How much did you love the line, "Why don't you tell the police what I saw"?
That was fantastic.
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
right.
so good.
Yeah, she's a good guy. She's a,
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the thing.
But
She's a
tell you,
pistol.
look, that was the first time I thought maybe Sally won't out him, right? Now that their marriage seems to be disintegrating, I'm not sure how much
to
relevant.
whom exactly? There's
Right.
nobody left to that.
But it was a look of, that's why it was such a great idea to be honest with them and to show them that, so that Sally can say, oh, I get it. You had a much harder life than I did.
So do you
So
think-
maybe I should stop being such a brat.
So do
I
you
feel
think
like
that was-
mission accomplished in a lot of ways.
So you think that the reason he did that was for the Sally situation?
Well, I think that Alonso's right. He's coming clean in a lot of ways, and that was part of him coming clean. Back in the day, in 1964, he would think, like, I don't have to come clean to my kids. Who are my kids that I would have to explain to them what happened? But in 68, as we're evolving here and as Don is evolving, he's getting to a point where he wants to say, look, man, this is who I am.
Right.
For the first time to his
And
kids.
after the whole Grandma Ida break-in, Sally even says, "I don't know anything about you."
Yeah.
And and now that she's getting older, and the fact that she is I think of the one relationship with a female that matters the most to him, more than Betty, more than Megan, more than Peggy. It's Sally, and I think when he sees that hitting the rocks, he realizes that's a big chunk of his decision to climb off the mountain of bullshit and really start figuring out what his life is going to be as an honest person.
What a significant thing that Don, and what a positive thing for Don, for those looking to see signs that we will see a different, less self-destructive, less I don't care, I do whatever I want regardless of the consequences for anybody else, Don, is that he takes his kids to the house in Pennsylvania after getting fired. It was clearly his plan, right, over the holidays, one would presume, but he didn't react to that news and decide, he didn't react hideously to that.
Yeah.
He actually continued on. He's like, all right, well now we got some time to stretch our legs here on this on this visit.
I think that was part of his process. I think that maybe they should have had that scene before the firing in some ways, so that, what I wanted, in terms of cinema, if you will, is he
You just said cinema and then if you will. Just want to point
okay,
that out.
yeah. Okay, good point.
He's on set. It's coming.
Right.
What I was looking for in terms of cinema, if you will.
Well, I do declare, what I would have preferred is,
No, the elevator closes like The Sopranos. We go to black. right?
yeah.
And Superman has left the building.
Yeah.
But like when you say like The Sopranos or whatever, that's why I'm so glad they didn't, because that's what we expect now. That's what we expect. This, we're dangling off the edge of the cliff, fade to black. I'm so glad there was some resolution and we got a little bit more. It was almost like an epilogue. Like maybe that was the end, and we did just get like the "and by the way," which I think was important.
Instead of a cliffhanger, I think it's more like, coming next season, the Don Draper 2.0.
Right.
Which I think is more interesting. It's not just, what's going to happen now that he's fired? It's, okay, we see where he's heading. What's that going to be like?
Right, he took a first important step, but we're not so foolish enough to think that this guy's never going to have another drink or never do a wildly selfish act that destroys 10 people who he claims to love.
Right.
That he could do that tomorrow. He could do that the
Right.
Friday
So
after
this-
But
Thanksgiving.
it's the first step.
Right.
So
it's the first
the
step, right.
Hershey's meeting is like the synopsis of all the seasons
Yeah.
and a prelude to season 7 all wrapped up into one. In the beginning, Don Draper is Don Draper, and all the partners are beaming like, we're in the room with Don Draper. Look at him, he sold Hershey, the unsellable Hershey,
Right.
And then he decides, I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want, and I'm gonna tell him this horrific story about a whorehouse I grew up in. And then all the partners are like, oh my God, we're in the room with Don Draper.
That's when Don Draper becomes a verb. Like, oh yeah, Don Draper. Oh God, we just got Don Draper.
He just got drapered.
Yeah.
And then Harry Hamlin's look of shock and
Terror.
horror was great. Like what is happening in this meeting? And then finally, as a prelude to season 7, this is the new honest Don Draper,
Right.
and God knows what's going to happen in season 7.
But that's the question. How honest? Because honest can mean a whole lot of things. I mean, are we Dick Whitman honest, or how honest are we going to get?
Also, is Sally gonna get Dick Whitman? Is he gonna be? I mean, I assume the Bobby and Gene. They're not ready for Dick Whitman, but Sally could hear Dick Whitman.
Yeah, and can we all agree that how much of a better name Don Draper is than Dick Whitman? So
I
nicely
think
played.
that's
That's his
part of the point.
first salesman's thing, right? Like
He picked the right dead guy in Korea
exactly
to steal his identity.
to name himself.
And
after.
that's the thing, as much as I love Don Draper, I mean, it's like for every guy that I never understood was like, some crazy bimbo in a movie, I'm like, but what's the appeal? And they're like, you don't understand. That's how I feel about Don Draper. I'm like, you just don't understand. And even with Don, as grotesque as he is in some ways, and as much as I love him, I was so completely satisfied with his, step towards his downfall. I feel like we needed that. We needed him to be more human, and we needed to see like, you can't do this forever. You pay now or you pay later, and he's paying now.
Yeah, I didn't. As much as I've been conflicted about Don this season, I didn't need to see him get his comeuppance. I wasn't like, yeah, haha, take that, Don. But at the same time, I like that we got back to the humanity of him being nice to Ted, even though it was a dick move to his wife, Megan.
Also, there was there's a risk when you keep having the guy exhibit this bad behavior with no consequences for him, but consequences for everybody else. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Like, so something needed to change. From a storytelling.
If you will.
And can I just say too, like, and I felt better, like, because there's parts through the 6 seasons that I really liked Don, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted him to get back to being the good Don.
Yeah.
So I felt like this actually helps him in some way.
I felt like the line of Ted's was a shout out to everybody who's been saying, "There's nobody to like on the show." When Ted says to him, "There's a good guy in there.
Yeah.
There's a good man in there."
Yeah.
So I think that the fact that this season has been 1968 really underscores an upheaval in the world in general, which Ted again references when he talks about how confusing the world is and the chaos out there, and as a reason that he doesn't want to leave his wife. I think because of the unrest and the paradigm shifting that's going on, that the Don Drapers of the world are losing their footing, and so I think it's very telling that in this year of tumult that he, finds himself less and less able to kind of do business as usual.
Right.
I'm going to make a couple of predictions because my prediction was so good this week. I was sure that Bob Benson was going out the window.
Yeah. By the way, can I just say to suck it to you guys for it's like all the death predictions
Yeah,
and
I just
like
read them online. I wasn't necessarily
okay, like everybody's gonna die,
Matthew Weiner said the one thing that will not happen, he can promise you, is Don will not fall out the window on Fifth
they're
Avenue.
not doing the opening
Or
credits.
Matt-
That's why I thought that
Madison
made
Avenue.
sense that it would be Bob.
Yeah.
That sort of I thought would. Anyway, that one.
throws him
So
out the window.
right.
Wait,
So
okay, do your
so the prediction that this one. Oh, I forgot the other one, but one of them is that. Well, first of all, Roger. cannot possibly survive season 7. I mean, the long lingering shot on the cigarettes after like he smokes with Bob and he puts
you
it in.
guys are good at picking up the
There's
details.
there were like 15 cigarettes in that ashtray. Plus, he's already had the 2 heart attacks, and he's getting Joni has opened the door to the unfortunately named, what's the kid's name?
Kevin.
Oh, that's all right. Never mind. To Kevin. So he's done. Roger, it's a bit of a tragedy.
So do you think all 7 seasons will have been one long PSA to quit smoking?
Maybe that's right. It could have been.
Well, and somebody on the Vulture, I think, pointed out that 1969 is the year when the FCC bans cigarette ads from radio and television.
Oh, is
so
that right?
that may be around the corner. Although they don't have a cigarette client now, do they?
You
No, I don't
guys,
think they
you
do.
guys have no credibility left on who's getting killed on Mad Men. Okay.
Now,
You got what, 3 deaths you guys were predicting?
I always said with the Meghan thing, it was just she was wearing the Sharon Tate thing, and then they embraced it. In fact, the more they embraced it, the less I thought that it would actually happen. Our friend Charlie was telling me after when Don had the hallucinations out in California about Meghan, that Meghan was already dead.
All that Rosemary's Baby stuff
It's
seemed
not
like it was
Shutter
going somewhere.
Island.
But
Yeah, it's
no.
Mad Men.
Okay, but let's get back to Bob Benson because he's been my obsession all season.
Yeah, okay.
This episode definitively proved you do not fuck with Bob
Totally.
Benson.
Yeah,
He will
yeah.
get you kicked off a Chevy, and when Roger tells him to stay away from Joan, he's there next to the kid with a carving knife
And an apron.
and an apron.
Right, yeah.
And maybe under the apron, the little shorts. I don't know. But you do not mess with this
Well,
guy.
he's a houseboy after all.
Indeed.
But then but not only did not mess with him, but nobody thought that he did Pete wrong. Like
Right.
Pete, Pete
because
Pete started it.
Pete couldn't admit what happened, so for Pete to tattle on Bob would have been to make himself look like an idiot.
Right, yeah.
So he was stuck, which is why was the perfect revenge for Bob, to get back at him for the whole, he's not coming to the chop house
I learned a
today.
life lesson from that. That if you've got a guy as dangerous as Bob Benson, don't think that you're going to be smarter than him and play tricks
You
and
can't
use him,
out-crazy that.
as we talked about in the last episode. I'll be able to use him against other people. No. He'll use you, throw him out the building as soon as you can, have him go,
But of course,
He's Eve Harrington.
but it is a
Right.
risk that Bob took, because if that doomed Pete, and I don't know how well he was thinking that this would get Pete thrown off the account, maybe it did, but now Pete can just out Bob.
Well, and speaking
Which
of Bob,
Bob didn't seem, but I'm thinking in that moment Bob didn't care, like he was taking too much grief from this guy. And he
Well,
was
and,
gonna-
right,
and
but
he-
again, if for Pete to do that, I guess you're right. He could do that without getting into the details.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that we haven't really talked about Pete. Like this episode, as Trudy points out, I think he is free.
Yeah, totally, right.
No parents, no wife and kid. Like he is untethered, and he says, I didn't want it to be like this. But it's like, well.
Yeah.
And yet it
But
is.
Maybe you did. And so, look, I'm still not quite sure why he's going to California, but that scene with him and his brother where they proverbially throw their dead mom overboard, right?
The poor
She
woman
was
gets
literally
thrown
thrown
over
over.
twice.
Right, exactly. They're like, well,
My favorite line in Mad Men so far, I played it like 3 times. She loved the sea. Well, so wrong. She loved the sea. Yeah, they're just like, let it go. Because we learned about Manolo. Is that his name?
Manolo alias.
AKA
Right.
Marco.
Right. It turns out, no, he was what Pete thought he was.
Yeah.
And he almost certainly pushed her over the ship.
no, he killed her.
He killed her,
I'm
yeah.
not even having that conversation.
Did he get him to change
Oh,
the
but by
will
the way,
first?
my
I don't know what
bad.
the point is.
My bad. You guys were right. Somebody did die.
Yeah.
Pete's mom.
There we
go.
Pete's mom, yeah. That's Pete's mom at the beginning.
Going over the ship.
Off the Lido deck.
Yeah,
remembering
totally.
20
You guys have the best analysis of anyone ever.
That was a great conversation Pete was having with the private investigator, because she was like, where? And then he described where on the ship.
Yeah, the
It's
Lido
only-
deck.
Right, it's the only place. He's like, no, where in the ocean? Where in the world?
I think
Yeah.
it was the promenade.
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
if I recall
probably, yeah.
correctly. I just like saying Lido deck.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, Pete, that was horrible. But we already knew Pete was horrible. I don't know why Pete's going to California. That was confusing.
Yeah,
You-
I thought there could have been another 5-minute scene to explain that. My guess is that he's running the office with Ted.
The Rolling Stone piece made it seem like he quit. He wasn't at the partners meeting when Don showed up there, which is significant.
Oh, right.
He could have quit. I don't know, but yeah, maybe Ted needs an account guy in California, and then Pete is a perfect guy to head out there
But then
now.
he
So
would still be an employee.
he would still be an employee. So
Right,
knows?
yeah, maybe he's giving up his partnership.
Yeah,
Well,
who
because
knows?
they already said that going to California is a demotion. So
In Don's world, Don's view of it.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, like if Ted's going, maybe it
kind of
doesn't
a-
seem like a
it's cachet,
demotion. And
yeah.
Stan may have been right. It may be an opportunity.
And in 1968, California seems like the wild, wild west. Like, who are the lunatics out
Peggy
there,
calls it
right?
Siberia.
Right. And New York is the whole center of the world. But starting from 1968 on, I got bad news for New York.
Right.
LA becomes the center of the world.
It's like, well, I'm sure it's the same with publishing. You know, that if you're not in New York, you might as well be in, Bug Tussle.
Yeah.
So and Bob Benson seems poised. The one thing that we did talk about from the beginning that may be true, Bob Benson seems poised
He's a comer.
to be
He's
the
rising
Don
the ladder.
Draper of the 1970s.
I don't like it. He's
Yeah.
capable of, we don't know what he's capable of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
but I mean,
Don is
yeah.
a conflicted dude, and he's a good guy in there. There's a bad guy, a rude guy, an inconsiderate guy in there. There's a possible psychopath inside Bob Benson.
There's a
Yeah.
possible
Right.
psychopath inside Bob Benson.
So that's not a good thing.
Well, but there's always been a sociopath in Don Draper, so
There's an important difference between sociopath and psychopath.
But showing kindness when you're gay, showing kindness to Joan, who doesn't have great power in the office. I mean, maybe that's his in, but
She's
that
a partner,
Yeah.
and so why is he doing
just
all that
seems
stuff
like
with her?
pure. That seemed like just flat out old-fashioned goodness.
No way, he's playing her. He's playing. You're gonna make the mistake of trusting Bob fucking Benson. Is that what you're gonna do?
So let me
Are
ask
you
this-
new here?
Look at me. Here's my reaction to Bob Benson going forward after the Pete Campbell debacle. Hey Bob, how you doing? Oh, shit, gonna throw him out the building.
So let me do this now. Look, in all fairness, I don't want to recreate everything. We already taped this segment and we weren't rolling. So some of this conversation is recreated, but I brought this up 20 minutes ago, and I found it to be significant. Alonso and Gina trumped it because they pretend to be smarter than me and Cenk. But we know that's not true. So I was thinking about how sort of indelible these characters were. It was in the context of thinking about how there's nobody to like on the show. I'm like, maybe not anybody to like, but they're all imprinted on us, and that years from now we're going to know Don Draper and Roger Sterling and Pete Campbell and Bert Cooper and certainly Bob Benson. You even mentioned Harry Crane. We know them
Harry
all.
Crane.
And then I was like, yeah, and the women too, Peggy.
Olsen.
But I don't know her last name, and I didn't.
And-
Joni.
Harris Holloway.
Right? Okay, you know it up.
I would have never gotten Harris Holloway in a million years.
Eventually, I would have gotten Olsen, I guess. But at first, when I thought Peggy Olsen, right before I brought it up, I thought, no, that's Superman. like literally, like
yeah.
that's.
You know why I remember that Joan's last name is Harris is because the British guy always called her Mrs. Harris.
That's right. That's
right.
right. That's
and
right.
so
Price.
yes.
But we're bringing everything full circle. Superman has left the building, and Superman's,
Protege.
the protege is Peggy Olsen.
Yeah.
So, that's my cinema reference for the day.
Metropolis.
So anyway, I thought a great ending. I thought that look between Betty and between Sally and Don was really great and telling and encouraging. That maybe it was a rare moment where Mad Men made you feel good about people.
Right.
And what we so rarely get in television is the idea that this could go anywhere.
Right.
And this could go anywhere. Obviously it's going to still be about Sterling Cooper Partners, but it's going to be about the adjuncts in California. It's going to be about Megan in California. It's going to be about Don's
Yeah, I don't think
journey
Megan is
to
gone because I think Don is likely to be then in California.
Sure,
So
yeah.
much of the show is going to be in California. I mean, the show's going to be wherever Don is. We're not going to get a lot of scenes in California between Ted and Pete and Megan if Don isn't there.
Right.
You know.
Well, but Wiener pointed out people thought that Betty was going to be off the show after those guys got divorced, and they didn't. And
Yeah.
she was
No,
still
people
around.
didn't think
No, but it's still-
that she was going to be off the show. People wanted her off the show. There's a huge difference.
Yeah, anyway, I thought it was an outstanding season finale, a difficult season finale.
I'm looking forward to Don being the good Don in season 7. Maybe I'm a sap, but
No,
bring
I
good
like-
Don back and throw Bob Benson over.
I mean, like good Don, but tough Don.
Yeah,
Still,
yeah. And, no, don't get me
Still
wrong.
Don.
Have sex with half of New York. I got no
good is
problems with
relative.
that.
Oh, I know what I want Don to do. I remember the other production. Like, please, wait a couple of weeks. Megan leaves. Obviously, Megan's got to go, and Don did Megan a favor, I think, by setting it up this way. Because, of course, when he sabotaged Hershey and did the great thing for Ted, he did a terrible thing to Megan. Once again, it was like he didn't think about it, but I think he was still saying, no, you still go. I know you fucked up your life still. We'll make it bi-coastal, whatever. They have no, please, call the Jew. Call Rachel.
The Jew.
The Jew, right.
Rachel.
Dr. Rosen. I was like, don't call Dr. Rosen. Don't call him.
No,
Don't
Grace
confess.
was
The ori-
amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
The department
The
store
department
lady. Oh
store
my
girl.
God, now that's a
Me
callback.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Rachel.
I liked her.
Yeah.
I liked her. I wouldn't mind calling her,
Yeah.
but that would be bad,
fabulous.
Don.
But she would act in a weird way. That's actually a grown-up perfect
Right,
match
right.
for Don.
No,
And
at
maybe
the
the
end
only-
of season 7, they conclude the show with Don and Joan having sex, and it's over.
That's it. That's how it ends.
Rachel would be the only woman that hasn't like suffered after her encounter with Don, because the doctor lady I think was
yeah.
devastated, and his bohemian is now a
Right.
junkie, and
Right.
it's a
Right.
it's a
Right.
trail of
Megan's-
bodies
Megan's a
behind
basket
him.
case. Right. Yeah.
And I don't know a lot about the music of that time, but didn't you feel like, at the very end, the very last scene, they're looking at each other, it's this old decrepit house, and then that song comes on, and it was just like kind of David Lynch perfect.
I read what it was.
Both sides now. Judy Collins.
Right.
There you go.
It's a who?
Judy Collins. It's
Oh, I
a
thought it
Joni
was-
Mitchell
yeah,
song.
it's a Joni
but
Mitchell song, but
Judy
right, yeah.
Collins had the hit with it, though.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the last season, Wiener talked about this in an interview. Last season ended with "You Only Live Twice," which is very feels into a lot of the stuff in the show. And then now both sides now. So again, it's about Don's dueling natures. With
Are we going to end next season with double vision?
God, I hope so.
All right, good stuff. This was fun. We will be back at some point with some Newsroom, definitely.
Breaking Bad,
Newsroom, and whatever.
2.5 Men.
2.5 Men. Cenk will lead that conversation with himself. Yeah.
No, I'll have 1.5.
No, see, it's awesome because he gets all these girls. It's why it's so good.
Cinematically speaking.
Yeah, you will.
I love the hookers that he hooks up with. I do declare.
All right. Thank you, everybody.